I'd like to call to order today's meeting. Today is Monday, January 6th, 2020, and I'm calling the organizational meeting of the Fitchburg City Council to order. Please be advised that FATV is conducting audio and video recording of this meeting for public broadcast. If there is anyone else in the audience who is recording this meeting, please identify yourself for the record by stating your name and address. Seeing none, I'd ask Councilor Kuchmarek to lead us in a salute to the flag.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, I will take attendance. Councilor Boschman?
Present.
Councilor Kuchar?
Here.
Councilor Di Natale?
Here.
Councilor Fleming?
Sorry, here.
Councilor Green?
Here.
Councilor Kuchmarek?
Here.
Councilor Schultz?
Here.
Councilor Squalia?
Present.
Councilor Van Hazinga?
Here.
Councilor Walsh?
Here.
And Councilor Zarella.
Here.
Great. I'm going to read the warrant for the organizational meeting. The organizational meeting of the 2020 City Council will be held on Monday, January 6th, 2020 at 10 a.m. in the Fitchburg State University Idea Lab, 717 Main Street, second floor in Fitchburg, Mass. The meeting has been called for the following purposes: administration of oaths of office to newly elected officials, which include the mayor, city council, and school committee, the election of the council president for the year 2020, the election of the council vice president for the year 2020, and two orders: one, adopting the rules of the city council for the new year of 2020, and also setting the dates of the regular meetings of the city council for the year 2020. Okay, first on the agenda is the administration of oaths of office to the newly elected officials. I'm going to come around the table. Mayor, you would be up first if you would like to join me. Well, yeah, I'm going to come around through here. Okay. Mayor, please raise your right hand and repeat after me to take an oath. I do solemnly promise and swear
I do solemnly promise and swear
that I will faithfully and impartially,
that I will faithfully and impartially,
and to the best of my knowledge and ability,
and to the best of my knowledge and ability,
perform and discharge all the duties incumbent upon me,
perform all
perform and
and discharge all the duties
incumbent
incumbent upon me
as mayor for the city of Fitchburg.
as mayor of the city of Fitchburg.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you.
Jim wasn't going to let you get away without
Thank
it.
you. I know both got me on mine there.
Congratulations. Welcome to the party, pal.
Welcome back.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Okay.
I'm not going to have all the councilors come to the middle because it's going to be a little bit of a corral. So if I could just ask all of the city councilors just to stand. Thank you. And if you could please raise your right hand and repeat after me to take an oath. I do solemnly promise and swear
I do solemnly promise and swear
that I will faithfully and impartially,
that I will faithfully and impartially,
and to the best of my knowledge and ability,
and to the best of my knowledge and ability,
perform and discharge
perform and discharge
all the duties incumbent upon me
all the duties incumbent upon me
as city councilor for the city of Fitchburg.
as city councilor for the city of Fitchburg.
So help me God.
So help me God.
The school committee members, you can join me in the middle. I think the three of you can sit here nice and comfortably. And if I could have you raise your right hand, you can take an oath. I do solemnly promise and swear
I do solemnly promise and swear
that I will faithfully and impartially,
that I will faithfully and impartially,
and to the best of my knowledge and ability,
and to the best of my knowledge and ability,
perform and discharge
perform and discharge
all the duties incumbent upon me
all the duties incumbent upon me
as a member of the school committee for the city of Fitchburg.
as a member of the school committee for the city of Fitchburg.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Do a good job.
See you tonight.
Absolutely. So next on the agenda is the election of the City Council President for the year 2020. I declare nominations open for Council President.
I'd like to nominate President Kushner.
Okay.
Move nominations be closed.
Second.
Okay. So I will now conduct a roll call vote to close nominations. Councilor Boschman.
Yes, I do vote for him.
This is just to close nominations?
What's that?
This is just to close the nominations?
Yes.
Okay. Councilor Kuchar?
Yes.
Councilor Di Natale?
Yes.
Councilor Fleming?
Yes.
Councilor Green?
Yes.
Councilor Kuchmarek?
Yes.
Councilor Schultz?
Yes.
Councilor Squalia?
Yes.
Councilor Van Hazinga?
Yes.
Councilor Walsh?
Yes.
Councilor Zarella?
Yes.
Okay, I declare nominations are closed. I will now conduct a roll call vote for Council President. The individuals nominated are Councilor Kuchmarek. When I call your name, please state the councilor for whom you are voting. Councilor Boschman.
Council Chris Merrick.
Councilor Kuchar.
Councilor Kuzma.
Councilor Di Natale.
Kushmarek.
Councilor Fleming.
Kushmer.
Councilor Green.
Kushmer.
Councilor Kuchmarek.
Counselor Kushmarek.
Councilor Schultz.
Counselor Kushmarek.
Councilor Squalia.
Councilor Kushmer.
Councilor Van Hazinga.
Counselor Kushmarek.
Councilor Walsh.
Councilor Kushmer.
And Councilor Zarella.
Councilor Kushmarek.
Okay, by unanimous vote, Councilor Kuchmarek is president.
You're welcome.
Councilors, I'm once again humbled by the support that you've given me here today. That confidence that you've shown in me has strengthened my resolve to work harder, to continue that learning process, and to challenge myself past any previous boundaries that I had before as president of this body. There's an enormity to the situation that lies ahead, and I would say that there's this opportunity for us to challenge ourselves, to look past the seats that we sit in now and look at generations ahead of residents who will come after us, of school children who have yet to hit the halls of our public schools, and of elected officials who will one day sit in the same seats that we do. And I would say for those individuals, we should challenge ourselves to leave the city in a better place than we find it today. And I think it would be easy for us to think about politics and government and elections as being reflective of us, the elected officials. And I would say that in all of those cases, it's not about us. It's about the residents and those that we represent. It's about, those fears and those worries that keep those residents awake late at night, and it's about the hope that they have for that better tomorrow. And through those stressful moments that we know will come as elected officials, I would say that at all times we should keep those individuals, those fears, those worries, and those hopes at the top of our minds. You know, I think there's going to be times where we disagree. In fact, I'm fairly positive there will be times where we disagree over policies, over budgets. I think I would urge each and every one of you not only to reflect on what we came here to do today, which is to make the city of Fitchburg better tomorrow than it is today, and to apply that same process each and every day we convene as a body, and each and every day we act as elected officials on behalf of the city of Fitchburg. You know, there will be times where the passion of the argument and the stubbornness of our stance could easily get in the way. I would encourage you not to let that obstruct that promise of a better Fitchburg tomorrow and in the generations ahead. And I look around the room and I see no difficulty in seeing that we have 11 city councilors and 3 school committee members today, and a mayor who set out to work on behalf of those city residents and businesses each and every day. I'm excited to work with each and every one of you. I want to congratulate you on your achievements and your success in being here today. I think that is not our single benchmark of success. We have a lot of work to do in the term ahead, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you. So thank you. And with that, I want to open nominations for Council Vice President.
I nominate Councilor Walsh.
I nominate Councilor Green.
Do I have a second?
Second for Walsh.
Second for Green.
I have nominations for both Councilors Green and Councilors Walsh.
Move nominations be closed.
Second.
I have a motion and second to close nominations, which will be done by roll call.
Councilor Boschman.
Walsh.
This
Oh,
is
close
closed.
the nominee, sorry.
Councilor Kuchar.
Close.
Councilor Di Natale.
Yes.
Councilor Fleming.
Close.
Councilor Green.
Yes.
Councilor Kuchmarek.
Yes.
Councilor Schultz.
Yes.
Councilor Squalia.
Yay.
Councilor Van Hazinga.
Yes.
Councilor Walsh.
Yes.
Councilor Zarella.
Yes.
Okay, declare nominations are closed.
At this time, you'll say the name when your name is called of the councilor which you were supporting, that you were voting for Council Vice President. Madam Clerk.
Councilor Boschman.
Councilor Walsh.
Councilor Kuchar.
Councilor Green.
Councilor Di Natale.
Walsh.
Councilor Fleming.
Walsh.
Councilor Green.
Green.
Councilor Kuchmarek.
Councilor Walsh.
Councilor Schultz.
Green.
Councilor Squalia.
Councilor Walsh.
Councilor Van Hazinga.
Councilor Walsh.
Councilor Walsh.
Councilor Walsh.
Councilor Zarella.
Councilor Walsh.
Okay. By majority vote, Councilor Walsh is the Vice President for the year 2020.
Councilor Walsh, if you'd like to address the council.
Thank you. I just want to thank everyone for your support. I look forward to working with Council President Kuchmarek, the rest of the council as a unified council. I know that as President Kuchmarek has pointed out, I don't think we'll agree on everything, but I think that we all have the best interests of the city of Fitchburg at heart. And I look forward to working with all of you, the mayor's office, and the rest of the department heads in the city to move Fitchburg to a place where we want it to be.
First on the agenda, we have 1-20 order adopting the rules for the City of Fitchburg and Fitchburg City Council for the year of 2020. So we have amendments proposed by several councilors, by a couple of councilors, both Councilor Walsh and Zarella have proposed a number of amendments to the rules. At this time, I would turn this over to, I believe, Councilor Zarella, who will lead us through the proposed changes that are before this body.
Thank you. I'd like to note that I welcome Councilor Walsh to chime in at any time. I will yield on request, as several of these were by her initiative. So the first one is just, some of you who were here last year may recall that back in September, we adopted a rules change that affected the use of pronouns in the council rules to attempt to make it gender neutral in conformity with typical legal drafting standards. There was some controversy over that, and Councilor Walsh informed me that she had done some research of best practices within the state, and that the state simply eliminates pronouns where possible in its legislation. So this is just a change. It's not intended to have any substantive effect whatsoever on the meaning of the rules. It's just intended to do exactly that. Take any instance where we have he or she or whatever, and just replace it with whatever actual role or noun is intended in that context, so that there's no lack of clarity at any point.
To remove pronouns.
Yes. There is a file that was distributed that indicates all the places where a change will be made throughout the existing rules. It's really pretty minimal. It's, for example, Rule 1.5 used to say, I believe, when the president desires to vacate the chair, he may call any member to it, etc. It now would say, when the president desires to vacate the chair, the president may call any member to it.
I think the best way for us to proceed is to go individually and vote on each proposed amendment that is before us instead of collectively as a group.
Move to adopt proposed rule number 1.
Second.
I have a motion and seconds to adopt proposed amendment number 1. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Point of order. I believe we do need to take this by roll call because we need a 2/3 vote.
Okay.
We can do that.
Or should we do roll call at the once we've moved to adopt the final set of rules? So I think we'll vote on these each individually for expediency's sake, and then we'll do a roll call at the final to adopt after all of the proposed amendments have been individually voted on.
Excellent.
All right, so we have a motion and second for first.
We have a motion and
And
seconds.
it is unanimous.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you.
Councilor Zarella.
The second clarifies the public comment rules. There have been some comments from both councilors and members of the public in the past that it's difficult for members of the public to effectively use the public comment period to gain knowledge of proposals that are before the council because they're not allowed to directly interact with persons presenting the petitions. This is an attempt to strike a balance between a sort of free-for-all town meeting style where members of the public are directly involved in the meeting versus a situation where members of the public feel they're not being heard, by allowing the chair to convey any questions asked by the members of the public to the relevant persons, and then briefly allow the member of the public to clarify whether that was germane to the question that was asked. The out of order clause near the end basically just says, if you have a problem with the way the chair has handled this, deal with it in private. We're not going to debate in public whether the chair handled this rule correctly or not.
Move to adopt proposed rule change number 2.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Speaking on the motion, Councilor.
I would just like to
On the
clarify.
motion?
Councilor Motion, Councilor Green has the floor.
Sorry.
I'll add you, please.
I would like to add that public forum is designed for the public to take part in any of the discussions that appear on the agenda. And according to our rules already under 1-4, the president shall not only preserve order, but decide all questions of order. So to take it out of, because this gets into like, I don't know, just bogged down with like rules and how the public, who sometimes are fearful of even getting up and standing and speaking in a forum discussion, it kind of limits how they operate. And again, we want everybody to operate with civility and respect, both back and forth on discussion. But I think this just gets into just too many rules on how the discussion is supposed to take place when we clearly have the president of the board, that's one of the job descriptions of the job as president of our board. Thank you.
Councilor Zarella.
Understood. Through you, Mr. President. I think Rule 1.4 requires the president to decide questions of order pursuant to the rules as written. And as currently written, the rules on public comment, specifically Rule 2.4, does not actually enable any of the things included in the new proposed Rule 2.4.1. Also, the proposed rule is intended to clarify that it is not necessarily required, but normative for the president or chair to address these questions as they come up, as opposed to sort of having them vanish into the ether once they're voiced by members of the public. This is in all ways intended to enhance the ability of the public to participate, not to restrict. But for my part, as one of the proponents, I'm more than happy to entertain suggested amendments that might make it better.
Councilor Walsh.
As the rule currently stands, the public may speak, but the only thing that the public may do will be to make a statement. They're limited to 2 minutes. What this allows that person in the public to do is to ask questions through the chair or through the president to clarify any points that they may have made during their public statement. If they have additional questions, this allows that opening up, as you will, as Councilor Zarella has said. It enhances the ability of the public to address questions.
Councilor Boschman.
I'm gonna vote no on this. I think we're stifling democracy. I keep on saying it. I said it the last minute. I believe we're stifling democracy. We're missing the dialogue between the interaction of the people, and you can't ask questions where if I disagree with Councilor Talia across the aisle, when he says something, I can prove that he's wrong, and they can prove that they're wrong. We should be able to hear them speak. We're here to represent the people, not stifle democracy. And I think we're stifling democracy, and we're not allowing freedom of speech. That's how I feel.
Councilor Zarella.
With respect to my colleague, as I stated, all this particular proposed rule does is to increase the ability of the public to participate. The question of whether other rules in our rules that restrict the ability of the public to participate fully, as in, say, a town meeting style assembly, I believe it's a Form E assembly, any rules of that nature are not before the council at this time for reconsideration. No amendments were proposed to that effect. So a vote of no on this would in fact be a vote to maintain more restrictions, which this rule would lift partially.
Just so, particularly for the benefit of some of the new counselors, because Counselor Walsh and Counselor Zarella are proposing these changes, if there's considerable questions or commentary that I believe can be further clarified by the petitioners, in this case, I'm allowing them to speak after each individual counselor. As you're lifting your hands, I'm recording. Certainly ensure that you each get your opportunity to speak, question, or comment. That said, Counselor Di Natale.
This is a solution in search of a problem. 13 years in this body, I've never had a public member tell me that they can't participate. And the comment was made about how this has been a theme the last couple of years. No, it's been a theme by a very, 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 very select few. Since we made the rule change on how we could do our committee meetings several months ago, I didn't see the doors being battened down by the public that they were being restricted, because they're not being restricted, as predicted. So I've had 20 some odd finance committee meetings, not one single member of the public has showed up to them. And I allow it for public comment, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that the rules are lenient in the respect that the chair or the president can conduct their committee meetings however they see fit. And if there's a member of the public that wants to speak out of order, chair can recognize that person if they want. And I've said before, I've never seen a committee member, a chairman, ever deny that opportunity. I think this is getting to be way too in the weeds on a false premise. Okay? So there is nothing stopping someone from coming to a meeting. There's nothing stopping someone from speaking at a meeting. There's nothing stopping someone from submitting questions at a meeting. So when we talk about if you're against this, you're for restricting the status quo, which is restrictive, I disagree with that premise that it's restrictive. Again, not a single person has ever come to me and said, I can't participate in this meeting. Why? Because it's not true. So I think this is looking for a solution in search of a problem where none exists. So, and I speak on 13 years of experience doing this and several years chairing a committee that is on TV. Never happened. Never once happened. Someone put a bug in the council's ear and everyone thinks that there's restrictions. There's no restrictions. So I'm voting against this, not because I'm against restricting the public participation. I have to make that clear, because it was just phrased earlier that if you vote against this, you're for the restrictive procedure. It's not restrictive to begin with. Thank you.
Councilor Zarella.
Two clarifications. One is simply that pursuant to Rule 1.13, the use of the word chair in this new proposed rule is only intended to mean that it applies equally to committees, not that it applies solely to committees. The primary change this rule would affect has to do not with committees, but with the main meetings of the council. And under the current rules, at the main meetings of the council, it would be out of order for the president to recognize a member of the public outside the public comment period. I agree that at committees, this has been largely a non-issue. I have encountered some members of the public, yes, a distinct minority, who have said that they wished they were more able to get their questions answered at the main meetings of the council. I don't think it's a major problem, but I think that the way this rule is drafted, it gives the chair broad enough discretion that it's a tool in the toolbox. It's not a mandate to the president or the chair to entertain endless questions from all and sundry. It's an option. It's simply clarifying that it would not be out of order for the president to bring up a question that was raised during public comment, then turn to the person who asked it and say, did that answer your question, sir? That's all this is intended to do. I do agree that our council meetings and committee meetings have been generally exemplary in their openness to the public. That's not the intent of this rule.
Councilor Schultz.
I tend to agree with Councilor Di Natale. I don't see the need for this. And if we do need something like this, this particular clarification is it needs, I think it needs a little more help as far as the procedure goes on how it's all going to come about, because it seems like it's very general, and I don't think it would work.
Councilor Spaulding.
Thank you. I'm going to vote in favor of this. I believe any proposal that we can put forth to help address residents' questions better is something that we should absolutely be moving forward towards. But one clarification, it was kind of under my impression with this verbiage that when residents come forth and have a question during the public comment, sometimes it feels like they're asking a question, but no one can answer that question. Does the wording in this allow for the president or the chair to answer their question, or designate someone who has the answer to answer that question?
Councilor Zerlo.
The way the rule is worded, it was aimed primarily at the idea that the president might raise the question when the subject matter in question comes up in the ordinary course of the agenda. But if the rule were to pass, given the combination of the rule and the general discretion of the president, it would probably not be out of order for the president himself to offer a brief answer to a question if it were simple enough to answer in that manner. I don't think the rule contemplates a subject matter expert from the city giving a direct answer during public comment. However, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilor Green.
I am not in favor of this strictly because in our wording that we go to, if we vote for this, we've got in writing clearly stating, but in no circumstances shall any follow-up questions, elaborations, or ongoing debate be permitted between members of the public and persons either seated or on presenting to the council. I mean, if that's not restrictive right there, there's no other statement that's as restrictive as that. If we're truly allowing for open, honest forum, public forum debate in this instance, and if you don't like the word debate, we can use the word discussion, but I'm not in favor of this, and I do think that it is very important as we represent bodies of the public that we give them every opportunity to come and speak. But this is too much for the public to have to follow and keep up with on back and forth discussion and or debate.
Councilor Zerlo.
The clause in question, admittedly, actually, it wasn't drafted this way on purpose, but I didn't think of that objection. But looking at it in hindsight, the fact that it specifies the council rather than a committee means that that particular clause does not restrict the discretion of any committee chair to conduct the kind of sort of open, informal committee meetings that a lot of our chairs are accustomed to. As to full meetings of the council, this clause is no more restrictive than what the current rule already is, which is basically no public discussion at all outside of public comment period. This just specifies that that's something that isn't being changed. It's not an additional restriction being placed on public participation at full council meetings. It's saying we're loosening it in this way, but not in this way. Not that we're loosening it in this way and tightening it in this other way. Does that make sense?
Does it answer your concern, Councilor?
It answers my concern.
Okay. Councilor Fleming.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. I'm hearing different objections, but I'm not sure why they all sound different to me. If I'm listening to this correct, there will be a public comment, session at the beginning of the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
During that meeting, the president may turn to the person who asked the question or made the comment and ask them if this answered their question. That's all this is doing. So, okay, I don't understand an objection to that, so, okay.
Councilor Zerlo.
Basically, the way this would work is the public comment period itself would operate no differently than it does currently. Members of the public come up, speak for not more than 2 minutes. and then sit down. The president or chair, at their discretion, can keep note of questions that have been raised during this period, and then when the appropriate subject matter comes up in the normal course of the agenda, they can say, a member of the public raised the question of whether such and such is the case. Would you, the petitioner or subject matter expert, care to address that? The person sitting at the table would address it, and then the president or chair could turn to the member of the public who asked the question and say, did that answer your question? It wouldn't be during the public comment period, but it would allow the president or chair to directly address questions that have been raised by the public.
Councilor Di Natale? Councilor Fleming.
So basically, it's going to give the person making the comment more information. There's not gonna be an actual discussion, it will just be an answer directed to the constituent.
Right, it will be a way of making sure that the information that is brought forth is responsive to the question that was asked.
Councilor Di Natale.
I understand this is for the regular meetings. The reason why I brought up committee meetings is because 7-8 months ago, we were accused on this body of being some kind of a Russian Politburo because we don't allow people to participate. How dare we if we have committee meetings just for finding the committee members? And lo and behold, nothing's happened since we've done it, and I'm very shocked by that. So I just get nervous with these things because there are people who are accepting the wrong premise that we are not open. And it was said earlier, if you don't vote for this, you're for restrictive measures already in place. That's the problem I have with this, all right? And that's the problem I have with this, the fact that the premise is we're restrictive now when we're not. And anybody who votes against it is for restricting people. Drives me crazy because it's not true. And it's taken 20 minutes now to talk about this. This isn't some clear cut and dry rule change. Clearly there is some ambiguity. So I don't understand the need for it. I rarely, if ever, have seen this transpire. And in instances it has, the president has done it anyway. You know, no one has interrupted the president and says, no, you can't talk to that person. I think it happened a few months ago. Someone stood up and said, I couldn't hear. What did he say? Are you all set, sir? And yes, no problem. We already do it. We've never said to somebody, sit down and be quiet unless they're out of order. So I just don't understand the need for this. And the fact that the way it was presented, that's what turned me off to it. And that's why I'm not buckling for my no vote, because I'm not accepting these premises. Never happened before. They're false. So, you know, that's it. I'm done.
I think at the heart of this is Councilor Zarella's kind of constant endeavor to ensure that everything we do in practice is actually by the letter of the law. I have at times throughout the course of being president in the past 4 years where a department head or a counselor might address a particular issue and think, I just addressed all of the issues in the room. And you might have a department head that answered a question about one side of Green Street, and the residents saying, no, my concern is over the no parking or the handicap parking spot at the end of that road. You're on the wrong section of the road. And so we're discussing a completely different issue than what we think the residents are most concerned about. There's times where I've said, are you talking about Green Street at the intersection of this and that? No, I was concerned about the other side of the street. This would allow me, not that I haven't already done this before, but this would allow me as chair or as president to then turn back to the resident and say, okay, I just want to confirm where your particular concern or issue was about this specific intersection, correct? Yes, okay. Let's get a further clarification from the department head or from counselors speaking to the issue. So I think this isn't largely deviating or changing much of what we currently do, but it's aligning the practice of how I typically chair a meeting so that it's, because in theory, a counselor could interject and say that my behavior by addressing a member of the public would be out of order. So this is allowing me that item. I don't anticipate, as president of the council, consistently addressing the public and saying, does this address your issue? No. Okay, well, let's talk about this further with the residents outside of public comment for about 20 minutes and then go back to the department head. I think this is an area that will be used very sparsely to ensure that we're confirming critical facts or details about the discussion and deliberation that we're having. I don't know if that helps to clarify. I will be voting in favor of this because I don't think this provides any additional restriction, nor do I think it provides any new opportunity beyond how we've currently conducted our meetings. That said, Councilor Zarella.
Just 2 points to clarify. One, I'd just like to reassure my colleague, Councilor Giannatalli, that my remark to Councilor Boschman was not intended to frame the issue as anyone who votes against this is in favor of restricting the public. Rather, there are restrictions in the sense that there are rules that are currently in place, and this lessens them. That doesn't imply that the current rules are overly restrictive, only that Councilor Boschman was concerned that this was increasing restrictions, and I was contending that this is decreasing restrictions. That doesn't mean that we are currently too restrictive. I don't think we are, or that anyone who votes against this is against openness to the public. I absolutely agree that that is not the case. In a broader point, just because this will likely come up again as we go through the rest of these rules, the goal in codifying some of these things in the rules is simply that right now we are very fortunate to have a council president who all 10 of the rest of us respect and trust to make smart calls during the meetings. That is not guaranteed to always be the case in the future. Rules are for the protection of the minority. So if someday we have a council president who is voted in by 6 of 11 members and consistently makes rulings that 5 of the members think are out of order, under the current rules, if that president were to ask this sort of question of a member of the public, one of those opponents could say, point of order, that's not allowed under our rules. And that would be correct. That would be absolutely correct. The president would be acting improperly if he simply said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. This confirms that that sort of interaction with the public under these limited circumstances is, in fact, in order. We need to have rules that don't assume that we're all always going to be in harmony. We're lucky that we are, usually. But if we were all constantly in harmony, we wouldn't need any of these rules. We could just have a meeting run based on, we all agree this is fine, and that would be that. So the point of putting this into the rules is to guarantee that it's clear even when we don't all agree on it.
Councilor Squally.
On Councilor Green's concern, it's my understanding with Councilor Green's concern with the additional statement, if such query is put, the answer shall be limited solely to either yes or big clarification. No circumstances shall follow questions, elaborations, or ongoing debate be permitted. And Councilor Zarella clarified that that's no more restrictive than the existing rules. So I would be open to amending my motion to amend that, to strike that sentence if Councilor Green would prefer.
I'm not going to vote for the whole thing, so I'm a no.
Okay.
Councilor Schultz.
I guess, by its very nature, you're being restrictive because you're taking away the ability, I think, of the chair or the city council president to actually do it the way they want to do it. Because you're saying that it's limited solely to either a yes or a brief clarification of the original question.
So, Counselor, anything that is not articulated in either our rules or Robert's rules would be out of order for the chair. Now, have there been circumstances in which I have done so? Yes, and that would allow the council the opportunity. So I think this is simply a hope for the practice as we've already done it to be reflected in our rules, and that way I'm not acting out of order when I do clarify or confirm with either a department head or a member of the public in the audience. That said, do I have a motion and a second?
This is just.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in opposition? I have 1, 2, 3, 4 in opposition. This requires 2/3, therefore the motion fails. Councilor Zarella.
Proposal 3, I would first like to make a motion to amend to strike the words "and 2.4.1" since 2.4.1 was not adopted.
Second.
I have a motion and second to strike amendments to Rule 3, correct? Or Amendment 3?
No, to strike the words "and 2.4.1."
Okay, understood.
Proposal.
All right. I have a motion and second to amend to strike 2.4.1. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion carries. Councilor Zarella.
So all this does, Rule 4.5 currently says, at the discretion of the chair, the public may be provided with the opportunity to speak at any gathering of the city council or committee of the city council. This just clarifies that when that happens, the already existing Rule 2.4 does apply, namely that the person must first be recognized by the chair, they state their name and address, they speak only on matters appearing on the agenda, and they're given 2 minutes. I will note that 2.4 does not actually say only 2 minutes, so if a chair wished to provide additional time, the 2 minutes appears to be a minimum, not a maximum, under the current wording of the rule. So this just clarifies we need to get their name and address, they need to be recognized by the chair first, they can only speak on matters on the agenda, and so forth.
Move to adopt and change number 3.
Second.
As amended.
I have a motion and second to adopt amendment number 3 as amended. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion carries. Amendment or proposal number 4, Councilor Zarella.
First motion to amend to strike the final sentence, again, as 2.4.1 was not adopted.
Second.
Motion and second to strike the final sentence. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Councilor Zarella.
So this actually, so basically this just states that we've had questions about what counselors are supposed to do if they have a question about a matter before a committee they don't sit on. This, again, is already a procedure that is currently possible under the existing rules. This just clarifies and says, submit questions to the chair in writing. The chair normally will read those into the record and seek answers for them during the committee meeting. The chair has total discretion to do whatever they need to do with those questions to keep the meeting running smoothly. So if there's either just too long a list, or multiple questions are repetitive, or there's an argument disguised as a question, the chair is perfectly within their rights to not read that question into the record. But it confirms that the chair, as already happens, has the option to sort of forward a written question from a counselor to the appropriate experts. The reason that it needs to be in writing in advance rather than submitted via public comment at the time is because, as we've discussed before, counselors who do not sit on committees must be treated no differently than members of the public at the meeting itself. So reading a communication into the record is distinct from recognizing a counselor to speak at the meeting itself. This was meant to work in synergy with 2.4.1 so that questions raised contemporaneously would also have a similar process to be handled. Obviously that didn't happen, that's fine. But that's the goal here. I would also at this time, because 2.4.1 was not adopted, I would like to make a motion to amend proposed Rule 4.9 to add what I've called the out of order clause from 2.4.1, basically the one that says that if you have a problem with the way the chair handles this process, don't bring it up. You know, it's not a matter for public debate at that time.
So can you just beginning on which, just so we're
Beginning with the, in the proposed and rejected Rule 2.4.1, I would like to take the phrase beginning, "It shall be out of order for any counselor," and ending with "discussing any topic raised," and append that to the end of Rule 4.9.
a motion? Do I have a second?
That is a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and second to further amend Proposal 4 to include that language that was just mentioned by Councilor Zarella. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 4 in opposition. Does the 2/3 apply to this as well? Or is it simple majority? Simple majority. Okay. Motion. The motion carries by a margin of 7 to 4. All right. Do I have a motion?
Motion to amend Rule 4.9 as amended to also add that at the discretion of the chair, a written question may be submitted less than 48 hours to the chair.
Councilor Zarella.
The reasoning for that particular clause is, I'm trying to find the rule that we currently have. That's to be in compliance with Rule 2.8, which says that matters to be presented at meetings other than communications from the mayor shall be filed. This actually gives more leeway to file. But it basically makes sure that any such questions can be submitted in the packet that goes out to the committee chair, so that the committee chair will be aware of what questions are going to come up when they are prepping for the meeting.
Point
Councilor Zarella.
Point of
Sorry,
order.
Councilor Squally.
It doesn't say council committee meetings, right? It says meeting of the city council.
That is true. It's not actually directly required by 2.8, and if it were, we could amend that anyway. The point is that in practice, the city clerk still attempts to submit packets for committees at least 48 hours in advance. And to allow less lead time than that would make it such that a question could be submitted after the committee chair has already picked up the packet from City Hall, which would make it very difficult for the committee chair to appropriately address those questions.
Correct, that's my amendment, to be able to allow councilors to submit a question before 48 hours to the chair, at the chair's discretion, to ask that question to such department heads in a meeting.
I think I see where you're going with that.
There's a motion, but I have no seconds. I have a motion and seconds. Speaking to the motion, my only concern is just, within that 48-hour window, it's harder to guarantee that. So if you're looking to guarantee that within that 48-hour window that question still be read, I think that's, if it happens the day of a committee meeting, often counselors are going right from work or the office right to the meeting itself, the documents that they have already prepared, and to be able to get that additional question. That would be my concern, is that things will be missed, and logistically there's no way of ensuring. I think that's putting a burden on a chair that you need to block off the previous hour or two before every committee meeting and ensure that you've logged or received all of the questions that have come in from other counselors. I think that's a difficult burden to put on chairs. That said, if you're just saying that it may be additional communication may be read if the chair can acknowledge and receive, I think that's okay. Councillor Van Huizinga?
Yes, so the inclusion of the question at the chair's discretion anyways. So I think it's just simple practice that the more notice you give the chair, the more likely it is to be held. If you wait till the last moment, you run that risk. I don't think there's any requirement that in this rule that the question be read. So I think this is good because concerns do come up at the last moment.
So, Councillor, can you restate how you would like this to read?
Not less than 48 hours prior to the scheduled committee meeting, the clerk shall cause a printed copy of such question to be included, and then after, so the clerk shall cause a printed copy of any such question to be included within the folder packet prepared for the chair. At the chair's discretion, questions may be submitted to the chair less than 48 hours, and additionally.
Councillor Zarella.
Councilor Zarella has another suggested.
I would just suggest that we also include the words in writing, just so that it goes into the public record properly.
Yep. Okay.
Were you able to capture it all? Okay. All right, so I have a motion and second to further amend Proposal 4.
I have one question.
Councillor Boschman.
My question is what I don't understand. So when it comes for me to vote, I go to a committee meeting and they're debating something. How do I submit my question after the committee meeting where it goes to a full council and they ask questions on my question? How does that happen? My question to you is, if I go to a committee meeting and I know that I get a question with Kelvin Brook, and he's wrong in what he said about the airport, and I can prove it, I can't respond to the airport because I'm a public person. I only get 2 minutes. But based on what he says, I can't write it to prove it. How do I respond to that?
Councillor Zarella.
This rule simply has nothing to do with conduct at the meeting. What my colleague is discussing is essentially a desire for a separate amendment to the rules, which could be proposed at some later date, but isn't currently before us. I'd also just like to note again that we are a Plan B city, not a Plan E city. We're never going to have council meetings where members of the public have full rights to participate in back and forth dialogue as though they were members of the deliberative body. That simply isn't the way our system is set up.
So, and further, I would say that, Councillor, the committee meeting, once it's gone past that first measure of discussing and deliberating the matter, that gives you an opportunity to then sit down with that department head between when the committee meeting is over and the full council meeting. Now, the hope is that you have some, it's not the committee meeting ends and the council meeting begins immediately afterwards, but I would suggest that's your opportunity to further clarify or speak with the department head. But regardless, at the council meeting, if you believe that the department head was wrong and your opinion differs with that of the department head or any expert testimony that comes to the committee, that's your right to then speak and say, I disagree, or I believe that individual gave false information. Here's what I have, here's what I believe, and here's what I know. So that still doesn't give you that still gives you the ability to differ with anything said at a committee meeting. That part doesn't change. So I think what you're asking for isn't a part of this current measure. You'd have to propose a separate rule for that. We can't do that today, but you could do that in the future.
Mr. President, I understand what you're saying, but my problem is this. At one meeting, I didn't speak, and I asked you at full council to speak, and you told me, no, I couldn't. You said I had the opportunity to ask the question then. And it was a very important question, because we had, at that present time, we had 600 vacant homes, and I wanted to ask the commissioner
Counselor.
something then.
I know you're passionate about asking, about exploring a different way for that question and your concern to be answered. We're discussing a proposed rule change that's different from what you're proposing. So I don't know that this rule can be amended in such a way to address your concern today. I think we'd have to introduce something new, and we can't today craft another rule change that's not already before us.
Guess I vote no for that one, too.
That's it. I have a, did we vote on the amendment?
No.
Okay, so I have a motion and second to further amend proposal number 4. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in opposition? 2 in opposition. Councilors Boschman and Green in opposition. The motion carries 9-2. The matter is before.
Move to adopt the rule on amended.
I have motion and second to adopt proposal number 4 as amended. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those in opposition? 2 in opposition, Councilors Boschman and Councilor Green. Matter carries 9-2. Next, we have proposal number 5, Councilor Zarella.
This is basically a fix for, back in September, we adopted a new rule regarding matters that had been sort of stagnated in committee. It caused a lot of confusion the first time we tried to use it, and it became clear that despite our best efforts, we had drafted an overcomplicated solution for it. So this is an attempt to make that much clearer. Instead of the complicated process that we tried to navigate back in September and October, this just says that if a matter has been in committee for more than 2 consecutive meetings of the full council, it just goes on the council agenda as though it had been discharged from the committee. And then the council can either act on it directly as though the committee had just kicked it back to the council with no recommendation, or can send it back to committee at their option, or do anything else that the council could normally do with a matter before us.
Councilor Squalia.
So the problem that I have with this is that we have committee meetings that will happen only 3 times a year, say, and so we'll have 2 council meetings before there will even be a committee meeting scheduled. And the way it's worded, correct me if I'm wrong, it'll appear, may appear on the city council agenda before it even reaches the committee. So I would move that we amend this such that that can't happen.
Councilor Zarella.
My colleague is correct as to what the effect of the rule will be, but the council is at full discretion at that time to say, look, this came up on our agenda, it hasn't been dealt with by the committee yet, we're just going to send it right back to the committee. So if it's, say, a city property meeting, we only meet once a month. If something is referred to city property at the end of a previous month and we miss that next meeting for some reason, and then we have the 2 consecutive city council meetings after that, it would go on the agenda at the end, as our leftover matters have been for the last few months. And when it comes in front of the council, someone, currently me, unless I'm not chair anymore, would say, we haven't had a chance to meet on this yet, I move that we return this to committee. And the council could do that with no problem.
And I'll just add, it is my expectation when I appoint chairs that, this is an outlet for those rare circumstances where, because of scheduling, we're unable to get to all of the matters, or there's additional documentation that is pending that's more common in a couple of public works and public safety that has happened, where the department is unable to get all of the requisite information or recommendations. But it is my intent that once a matter has been sent to committee, that chairperson is scheduling a meeting within enough time that it doesn't have to to appear on the agenda as such. My hope is that it appears as a committee report, and even if it means we're holding it pending further information, then so be it. Happy to see it appear that way, but my hope is that within a month's time frame, we are at least hearing the matter and then taking any requisite action needed. Councilor Zarella.
And just to be clear, this is not intended in any way to bypass the committee process in general. The intent is simply that a motion, if we wanted to take something without having it go through committee first, normally we need a motion to suspend the rules, which is a 2/3 vote. Some matters are not time sensitive enough that we're going to take a motion to suspend the rules when they first come in front of the council, but they may still be time sensitive in the sense that they can't just be put out months. So this is just to ensure that if a matter were to get stuck in committee for scheduling reasons beyond anyone's control, and it were to be time sensitive, a minority of the council could not essentially kill it by refusing to vote a suspension of the rules. That's really the only instance in which I could see the council doing anything but kicking it back to the committee. The goal would not be for the council to just say, we're going to skip the committee just because. We could, but I don't think any of us want to do that.
Councilor Squally, I'll return back to you. Does that answer your...
Okay, that's fine. My concern would be that it appears on the agenda and we haven't had the committee meeting for months, and it's scheduled to be in a couple of months maybe, and councilors kind of push it forward and go, this isn't going to pass anyway, let's just get rid of it before it goes to committee. I don't know. But I'm okay with it. If we'll see how it plays out, and we can always amend it later. A motion to approve.
I have one other councilor, if you would hold that motion. Councilor Green.
I guess I'm just questioning back on what's the difference than what we already have in place, being granting extra time for it or referring it back to committee before we need all of this to happen. We've got rules and governing bodies already in place to say we've got the ability to grant it more time or refer it back to the committee. So I'm just concerned on why so many more words have to be added. That's all.
Councilor Zarella.
This is actually an amendment to that rule about asking for extra time, intended to simplify it. Because the last time we had the ask for more time process come up, it caused a great deal of confusion for the whole council. And since I was the one who drafted that process originally, I take responsibility for that. And all this is an attempt to streamline that exact process. So rather than the chair having to affirmatively make a motion for more time or anything like that, the council or even the president could just say, if there is no objection, we'll send this back to committee. And then there's no question of, well, what does the chair have to do? Do we have to read it into the record? Do we have, you remember that confusion that we had back in early October? This is only an attempt to dodge that by clarifying that rule that we made in September to a simpler, more streamlined, easier to understand process that just says the council can do what it wants with that matter, including send it back to committee.
Councilor Boschman.
A good question. If the petitioner asks for more time, what happens then?
It would be up to the discretion of the council, just as if the petitioner asks for more time in committee. The committee has full discretion to say, we'll hold this or recommend that it be held, or no, sorry, we're going to recommend that this be acted upon regardless. The petitioner, as is always the case with a petitioner, has the right to request pretty much anything they want to request, but ultimately it's the council or the committee that makes the decision as to whether to grant the request.
Councilor Schultz.
I was just wondering, I don't know if you have any estimate, Anthony, on how much time this might add to every council meeting if we have every issue that comes up that hasn't been dealt with in committee and we have to address it at the whole council.
These are fairly rare when it does happen, and this shouldn't take any additional time beyond what's currently done. This just articulates better what our options are for the council to move on it.
Generally, this will just be either a matter of, A, the committee wasn't able to meet and we're just going to kick it back out to committee. Simple, 10 seconds, done. B, we might have rare occasions once or twice a year where something that is time sensitive has to be pulled out of committee because if we wait for the committee, we're going to lose our opportunity to vote on a grant or something like that. The only time it would take any longer than that would be if we have something like we did back in October where we realize that there are like 24 matters that have been languishing in committee unrecognized since 2007. And then we've got to go through the whole slate of them and say, what are we going to do with all of these? But we dealt with that back in October. We disposed of all of them. And if we keep up with things, that really shouldn't happen again. So I would anticipate this will add no more than 5 minutes to any given council meeting, and usually less than that.
I have
Move to adopt rule change number 5 as written.
Second.
I have a motion and second to adopt proposed rule change 5. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous, motion carries. So we'll move next to petitions filed singularly by Councilor Zarella. These will resume. We'll begin with proposal number 1.
So this is just the reason that when we changed the gender language, I didn't include a proposal to delete Rule 1.1, and the reason that I'm also making a proposal that we add an additional clause to it now is just that having a rule of construction like that, a rule of interpretation, is useful because even though we are trying in these new rules and so forth to draft carefully and to use carefully considered wording, there's no guarantee that every rule proposed in the future will be of that form. We may have a situation where a future counselor at a future organizational meeting like this has proposed a loosely drafted rule that does include either gender references or confusion between singular and plural instances and so forth. So this just maintains a simple rule that is included in most legal codes across the country that just says, if any language like that exists in the rules, it's irrelevant unless it's very clearly intended to be relevant. It's just to avoid confusion, that's all.
Councilor Green.
That I just wanted to point out that yes, it is the law, and especially here in Massachusetts, there is a law for there to be no gender reference, and that we are to remain gender neutral in any of our rules moving forward. So it's just to clarify that yes, moving forward, if we spot any of that where there is notation of he, she, they, them, that it should be recognized as their title or their position and not the body as they represent themselves.
Move to adopt rule change number 1.
Seconded.
I have a motion and second to adopt proposal number 1. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous, motion carries. Proposal number 2, Councilor Zarella.
Basically, this just updates Rule 1.12 to the modern era. It confirms what we already do, which is that not all of our submissions to the clerk are either in writing or printed. Many of them are just by email. And obviously, if they're by email, they're also not signed. We're not printing out our emails, signing them, and scanning them back in before sending them to the clerk. So this just confirms that that is permissible, so that we can keep doing what we're already doing.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve proposal number 2. Speaking on the motion, All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion carries. Proposal number 3, Councilor Zarella.
This is just in keeping with all the discussion we've had about what happens if something gets stuck in committee or whatever. There's a phrase in Rule 2.5, until the next meeting, which really is kind of extraneous. It has no reason to be there and seems to be a holdover from maybe an older version of the rules where it was relevant. So it's cleaner to just delete it so that no one looks at it and says, well, this must have some significance. What is this supposed to mean? This must change our procedure somehow.
Move to adopt rule change number 3.
Second.
I have a motion and second to adopt rule change 3. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion carries. Proposal number 4, Councilor Zarella.
This is, in the last sentence of Rule 2.8, it says, distributed at least 48 hours, not including Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays before each regular meeting. I want to delete the words "and legal holidays" because it creates an undue burden on the city clerk. If the deadline for filing is 5 days, including Saturdays and Sundays, namely usually the Thursday prior, if we exempt legal holidays from the 48-hour count, then that would mean that if Monday happens to be a holiday and submissions are made on Friday, in order to comply with the 48-hour rule, the city clerk would have to prepare and distribute the packet by Thursday evening after receiving submissions Thursday morning, which is an unreasonable timeline. So this is just intended to alleviate that by basically saying the city clerk can distribute things on Friday even if Monday happens to be a holiday.
So, if I understand correctly, though, open meeting law still ensures that we comply with the language as it's currently stated. Councilor.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay.
So yeah, well, I admire the attempt, and that would be a nice thing for for us to do for our clerks. Unfortunately, it's the language as we currently have it is reflecting state open meeting law requirement.
Leave to withdraw.
I have a motion and second to give leave to withdraw to proposal 4. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion carries. Proposal 5.
Proposal 5 is just a typo correction. When we edited the rules back in September, we accidentally deleted too many words out of...
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion and second to adopt proposed rule change 5. Speaking on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. Motion carries. Proposal 6.
This is basically a no dirty laundry rule. It's, again, saying we can raise points of order, we can appeal decisions of the chair, but once it's been raised, appealed, and decided, we're not going to use our debate time to criticize the decision of the chair rather than to discuss the substantive matter under discussion. We shouldn't be essentially filibustering during debate and saying, you know, I feel that the decision of the chair on this matter was unjust, and therefore, you know, we don't need to be doing that in public meeting. The chair's decision is final unless successfully appealed. It's not a matter on the agenda to discuss whether the ruling was correct or not. So this clarifies that we really shouldn't, and this also says that we should not be criticizing other counselors personally during meetings. We can criticize ideas, we can criticize proposals, we can criticize explanations, but we shouldn't have anyone saying, you know, I feel that such and such counselor is being selfish or is acting out of improper motives or anything like that. Again, that's unless you're raising a formal censure, that's not something to be raised in public meeting. We meet to deliberate the issues, not to argue and air our dirty laundry.
Councilor Squilliam.
Are these just kind of repeating rules that we already have within it? Or, I mean, are we allowed right now to to criticize other counselors, either by name or not by name?
At the moment, it does happen on occasion. Whether it's technically permissible or not under Robert's rules is something I haven't closely investigated, but this clarifies that whether or not it is permissible under Robert's rules, it's not permissible under ours. We can do better than that, I feel.
I'd go further to argue that, we're supposed to be talking about the matter that's before the council at all times, not rehashing the decision of a chair. If once a ruling has been made final, if you appealed the decision and the council dispatched it, then we're returning to the matter, the subject matter at hand. That's what we should be deliberating upon. And then the further point of talking about other counselors, it shouldn't be relevant to what we're discussing. You can discuss opinions that have been expressed in the body, but we should be talking about the subject matter at hand. So yes, I think it's kind of reiterating the spirit of Robert's rules, but I think it's making it clear in no uncertain terms what our expectation is within our body. So I support this. Councilor Green.
Speaking directly to this, we should all be operating under our own code of conduct and how we behave personally. So we should apply those same code of conduct, which are most becoming to ourselves and even more becoming to us as a body and as a whole. So I would hope that we don't, I'm not a big fan of rules. So I don't want any more rules, and especially telling me how I should conduct myself. I would like to think that this is going to be a stretch, but at all times I do act accordingly and always with the best interest of heart. But to get into the weeds, so to speak, of where we have to, have it written out for us, I don't know. I just think that we're asking for trouble, especially not maybe with this body as we sit now together, but in the future, there's all kinds of stuff that can happen. We see blips of council meetings, in Boston where they get really down and dirty with each other. I hope we never approach that. I hope we never get to that point. And if we do, I think at that point we can amend these rules at any time. If we find that we're getting to that point where we are treading on thin ice with how we conduct ourselves with each other, especially, I think that needs to be that a point needs to be made about that. Thank you.
Councilor Zarella.
I agree. I hope this rule never needs to be affirmatively invoked. The idea is simply that this gives all counselors the ability to raise a point of order on that matter, on that ground, rather than putting all the burden on the chair or president to say, should I intervene or should I not at this point. It allows individual counselors to take on some of that burden by saying, look, I think this is inappropriate. Point of order, we're getting into personal attacks here. Or point of order, we're not here to discuss whether this rule is whether this rule of council proceedings is a good rule or not. That's not on the agenda today, or something like that. Again, if everyone behaves themselves, it will never be necessary. But that's true of just about any rule in our rule book. This is... Okay. This is for when that doesn't happen. It's rare, but it happens. And right now, under my best recollection of the relevant provisions of Robert's rules, we have to be dealing with a fairly direct personal affront to raise a point of order under the current rules. But like I said, I think we can do better than that. I think I think if I'm if I receive recognition from the chair and I start going off saying, you know, I am personally affronted by the fact that Councillor Boschman has said such and such thing, and I feel that's unbecoming, and I shouldn't be getting into that. I should be either raising a formal point of censure if I really think it's that bad, or keeping my mouth shut and talking like an adult to my colleague after the meeting and saying, look, I really think you could have phrased that better. You know, I don't appreciate the tone or whatever. That's not something we should be talking about in public unless it is bad enough to constitute a rules violation or cause for a censure motion.
Move to adopt rule change number 6.
I have a motion and second to adopt rule change number 6. Speaking on the motion, Councillor Fleming.
I just want to make a comment. I don't have a problem with rules. I think when there's an issue with rules, it's because you don't want to follow rules. Rules are meant just to keep things in order. They're not a punishment. They're not, you know, to stifle anybody, but they're meant to just keep things moving fluently. Excuse me. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with rules. It's just in black and white, and there's an issue with it.
Councillor Schultz.
I wanted to ask the city council president what he thought of having other councilors intervene on his behalf, if he feels that's necessary, or if things have been going pretty well up until this time.
I think there's a number of circumstances where points of order are entirely appropriate for councilors. And as council president, I'm often conferring with a city clerk or a city solicitor, or reviewing items as well as a counselor, because I'm one of 11 also trying to consider something that was said, or reviewing, in this case, I'm reviewing one of the rules right now. There are opportunities where as chair you might miss something, or where you're thinking about the next action that you need to take. So I do find that it can be helpful to have someone raise a point of order, and what it does is it stops the meeting for a second, it slows everything down, and it allows us to make the decision about the next way to proceed.
Is there a concern that if we keep adding to the rules, that the rules are going to become too burdensome, too cumbersome for new councils coming in, that they get this huge packet of rules, and
that is a concern.
That
is a concern I share. But not necessarily in this particular instance. I think the spirit of this is fairly straightforward. Of, you know, let's keep what we're speaking about and the subject matter germane to the topic that is on the agenda, and in terms of personal conduct, let's ensure that we're.
I agree with the whole premise. It's just that, you know,
I think
do we need to have it in the rules? I guess
I think it does provide an extra layer of clarification above and beyond what Robert's rules has given us, which can be vague. You know, if we decide not to move forward with this, but we still want to follow the spirit, then I guess I would just more strictly enforce Robert's rules, and you know, we could. But I think this provides the opportunity for a councillor to say point of order, and for them to have some grounds to be able to speak on. Councillor Boschman.
Can't we say point of order already? I noticed many of meetings where they call point of order to me or to my fellow colleague across the aisle. I mean,
you need to have the appropriate circumstance or opportunity to say point of order. If you said point of order, this would allow you that grounds to be able to make a point of order and say why you feel that way. Councillor Zarella.
Yeah, I'd just like to note, first of all, yes, a point of order has to be made pursuant to some rules violation. In the cases that my colleague is typically referring to, it's generally a point of order raised under the rule that requires comments to be related to the matter on the agenda. But also, with respect to my other colleague, Councillor Schultz, we already have, because we have Robert's rules as our parliamentary authority, there's already a very dense number of rules to understand, and it's neither expected nor required that every councillor will have a thorough understanding of each and every rule. If anything, this particular rule makes it a little simpler because it deals with things in very commonsensical kind of terms rather than very technical parliamentary rules. But in general, I agree. There's no way a new incoming councillor, particularly with no background in either law or parliamentary procedure, is going to immediately be up to speed on each and every rule of the council, nor is that required. But these rules, or even the entirety of our council rules and bylaws, is actually a rather small percentage of the totality of the rules we operate under. So this is kind of a drop in the bucket, so to speak. But I would invite any of my colleagues who ever have any concerns or questions about the rules to give me a call. I've been trying my best to make myself as much of an expert on them as possible, and I'm always happy to assist in any way I can.
That's it. I have a motion and seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion carries. We'll now do a roll call vote for the entirety of the rules that are now before us. So when the clerk calls your name, please.
Mr. President, well, I voted no on some of these, so what do we do then?
So, yes, some folks voted yes or no on it. These are the entire rules as are before you. So if we reject the rules, if we reject the rules, then we don't have rules of the body to move forward with at this point. Well, we would have to table the matter and move back to them. Councillor Di Natale.
Thank you. We have this concern every week with our committee meetings with the recommendation. There's a record of minutes, correct, of what we just discussed? So, I feel like we're accepting the report, and you may be against one or two things out of 15 in the report.
Yeah.
It's documented in the public record you were against item 1 and 6. But adopting the whole package, to me, is accepting the report of the committee as a whole. That we're accepting the report of these recommendations within the report, of which inside that recommendation report, you're on record saying, I don't like these two. That's always been a bugaboo of mine since I started on here, where if you have 10 petitions in finance and you voted against one of them, the finance committee meeting minute says, Council Boschman voted against this specific item, but in the full council, we're accepting the report or the recommendations of the committee. So I've always read that to mean you're accepting the report of the committee that says we approve all these things or disapprove all these things. So I think you're covered in terms of the minutes of the meeting we just had that documents your opposition to certain items. I could be wrong, but...
I agree with that point of that, yes, there are items in here that you may not have liked or not have voted for, but you're accepting these are the rules that I'll be following in the year ahead. You can reject these, but just keep in mind that means we'll either have to table it or we'll have to go back to the drawing board of where we go from here. So that said, did I have another question from councilors? Councilor Zarella.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, both in the context of a committee report, but even more so here, the question before the council now, or before each councillor now, is basically, given the changes that were approved and the changes that were rejected, are any of those changes that you objected to objectionable enough that you feel they invalidate the entirety of the rules? Because a no vote here would be a vote against everything. So basically it comes down to, are you willing to accept a set of rules that have one or two rules that you don't actually like? Or do you dislike them enough, which could be the case in certain cases. Do you dislike those rules enough that the whole thing is poisoned by them?
That said, we'll conduct a roll call vote. This requires 2/3 majority. Madam Clerk.
Counselor Boishman?
I'll accept it.
Counselor Kuchar? Counselor Di Natale?
Yes.
Counselor Fleming?
Yes.
Counselor Green?
Yes.
Counselor Kuchmarek?
Yes.
Counselor Schultz?
Yes.
Counselor Squalia?
Yay.
Counselor Van Hesinga?
Yes.
Counselor Walsh?
Yes.
And Counselor Zarella?
Yes.
Okay, a unanimous vote.
So next, before we adjourn, just a few items pursuant, now that we've adopted the rules, pursuant to 1.3, I will be appointing Counselor Zarella as parliamentarian of the organization for the reasons that we've just seen. I believe he knows and has authored more of the rules and more than anyone else. That was the most brutal decision I've had to make. All right. So thank you, Councilor Zarella, for undertaking this. And again, Councilor, non-binding decisions that he'd be providing an opinion to me on during council meetings when asked for it. Next, we'll move on to the agenda of 2-20, which is setting dates of the regular meetings, the City Council for the year 2020.
So moved.
We did. It was part of our packets. I can hand this over to you if you. I don't know that it's in front of you at this moment, but
It's fine.
okay. We'll make sure that everyone, as soon as we vote on this, we'll ensure that everyone receives an additional copy. But I have a motion and second speaking on the matter. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Motion carries. And then just a couple more items before we adjourn, councilors. First, I want to thank Councilor Green, who for the past 4 years has served as this body's vice president. I know that it takes a lot of work and a lot of additional collaboration with colleagues, and appreciate the work and the service that you've given to this body as council vice president. So thank you. Councilor Walsh, Vice President Walsh, I look forward to working with you in the year ahead and establishing that same relationship and collaboration. I'd also like to thank our state senator, Dean Tran, who was here earlier, a former member of this body who was here to congratulate us, and State Representative Stephen Hay called me this morning. Unfortunately, he had a family emergency, but he wished to communicate to this body the same of congratulations on being sworn in and on all of your success and achievement, and much luck in the term ahead. And I'd also like to thank Fitchburg State University for hosting us on Main Street, directly across from City Hall, as part of their theater block renovations. We're in the Fitchburg State University Idea Lab, and it's exciting to be down here on Main Street, not far from where we'll hopefully soon, later this year, open the City Council and Legislative building of our new City Hall campus. And lastly, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for Rosemary Clark, mother of former counselor Dave Clark, who passed away recently. She was a Fitchburg State University employee for more than 27 years, worked closely with a number of the student population there, and was adored by all. So I'd like to ask for a moment of silence at this time. Thank you. This time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I have a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, councilors.